So we can do a lot of Vipassana practice and get nowhere if our mind is distracted and dull. So therefore, we need Shamatha practice. We need to develop a more stable, calm, clear, focused mind, then use that to investigate reality and come to see directly, to realize directly, things are changing moment by moment. There's no independent world, none of and all these things. So therefore, meditation is key. Particularly here we've been looking at the Shamatha practice. Now, of course, in the meditation, there's not just Shamatha, but there's many ways of dividing up meditation, because there's many types of meditation. One way of grouping meditation is in two. We can talk about stabilizing meditation and analytical meditation. And as the name suggests here, stabilizing meditation is simply to stabilize our mind. So this is Shamatha practice. So if we can stabilize our mind, have a calm, clear, focused mind, then we can apply that in analytical meditation. Analytical meditation, as the name suggests, is to analyze, to investigate. And of course here, this can take many, many different forms, many, many different types of meditations here. But here we can talk about the two main aspects of analytical meditation or practice is wisdom and compassion. And of course, wisdom here is another word for Vipassana, or Vipassana practice. But we need to balance that with the compassion wing of practice. Now, unfortunately, when many people go into meditation, they tend to gravitate to one or the other. They seem more attracted to wisdom or Vipassana, or more attractive to compassion wing. And then they forget about the other wing. And then it's a disaster, often. You know, as we see in Buddhist traditions, the source of suffering is ignorance, distorted view. To overcome that, we need wisdom. So everyone understands, okay, I need to do Vipassana practice to overcome suffering. Let's go and do that. And then so full force into Vipassana practice. But often what happens is they sort of forget about this. And so they put a lot of effort into Vipassana practice and don't get very far because their mind is all over the place, distracted, dull, don't get anywhere. But let's say they did some Shamatha practice and they have a stable mind, and then they start doing Vipassana practice. Then what often happens is the nature of this practice is that you can become very self-absorbed. You can become completely disconnected from the world, and even to the extent of being insensitive to the sufferings of others. And of course, if someone's disturbing my Vipassana practice, watch out, you know. And then, of course, in very extreme cases, if people do this a lot of practice, they even get to the point thinking, oh, I'm a very high-level Vipassana practitioner, therefore, you know, that ethics stuff, that's just for beginners, not for me. I've gone beyond ethics because Vipassana means everything I do is with wisdom. So I can do whatever I want because it's with wisdom. And then they become completely unethical. So this is a big disaster. So to avoid that, we need to balance the Vipassana with the compassion wing. Now, unfortunately, sometimes people gravitate to the compassion wing and sort of forget about the wisdom wing. And then often that leads to difficulties as well. Because without the wisdom, going into compassion practice, just doing that, one thing that can happen is our compassion can be very biased. Yes, I'm going to help those people because they're nice people. These people I'm not going to help because they're horrible, nasty people. In fact, I hope they suffer because they deserve it. So our compassion can become very biased. But also without wisdom, even with the best intention in the world, you know, we can try to help it, we just create a big mess. In fact, we may create more suffering than was there before because we don't have the wisdom of knowing how we can help. And then also what can happen, and unfortunately we see this quite a lot in people who have a lot of compassion and they want to go out and fix and heal the world. And we see this a lot in people like aid workers and social workers, full of enthusiasm, full of compassion. I want to make a difference. And then they go out to try and fix and heal the world, and then within 3 to 6 months, compassion burnout, completely burnt out. So this is a classic example of compassion without wisdom. The wisdom here, of course, is the wisdom understanding what we can do to help, what we can't do to help, and the wisdom of knowing when to rest and look after ourselves. And then another case, and this is something we've probably all experienced, is that we try to help someone and then they take advantage of us. That's classic compassion without wisdom. Because if we allow them to take advantage of us, that's not very compassionate, because we're in some way contributing to them behaving badly. So that's not a very compassionate thing to do. So the compassionate thing to do is, with wisdom, is to understand to not tolerate that behaviour, to not allow that to take place, that trying to take advantage of us. So that is with wisdom. So therefore, in the meditation practice, in this analytical, and there are many, the two key areas, wisdom, compassion, we need balance. We need to do both balanced. So that is meditation. And then in terms of conduct, a couple of things to say. First, of course, in terms of conduct, we can talk about ethical lifestyle. Again, if we're being completely unethical, that's not going to really be much good support for our meditation practice or even our worldview. Unethical conduct is often symptomatic of a dysfunctional worldview. So if we start to fix up our worldview, particularly the idea of interdependency, that's going to help in terms of our conduct, in terms of being more ethical. Because we'll understand the reason to be more ethical is the idea of interdependency. And then, of course, also in conduct, one thing I want to mention is that often when people go into some sort of spiritual life, then they think, what should I do? Should I do the career thing or should I do the spiritual thing? You know, which one should I do? And then they give up their career and I'm going to do spiritual life. Bye-bye career. And then they sit there and go, okay, what do I do now? Maybe I should go and sit in a cave for 10 years. And then, of course, it's a disaster. Because, one, often then there's no financial income and can't support ourselves. And then two, what are we going to do with our life? So I think this sort of thinking, career versus spiritual, is wrong thinking. Rather, we should be looking to integrate. That we should be using a better worldview as a basis. Look at how we can use our career to be more beneficial in society. Because particularly if we're talented at what the career we do, then if we abandon that, we've given up the one thing that we're good at, the one thing that we can use to benefit society. Like, a good example is a couple of years ago, when I was in India teaching, I had exactly this thing come up. It was an Indian man who came up and had this quandary because he was in marketing and he said he was very good at it. He didn't tell me what he was marketing, but probably something like Coca-Cola or something, I'm not sure, he didn't say. But he had this quandary, this marketing I'm doing, I'm very good at it and I enjoy it, but it's really not benefiting anyone. And he was thinking of giving it up. And I said, don't do that, because you're obviously very good at it. Integrate. So I said, instead of marketing something like Coca-Cola, market renewable energy. Market something useful in our society. Use your skills to benefit society. So I think this is how we should be thinking. Of course, if we're in a career and we only got into the career to make money and we actually hate that and we're not very good at it, then maybe we can think about changing what we do. But if we have something we're good at then just integrate. Use your talents to benefit society. So that's a little bit about integrating view, meditation, conduct. What I'd like to do now then to finish today is have a look at how we can set up our daily life, structure our day to be beneficial in terms of these three things. So in terms of meditation, of course, the key to success is continuity. And continuity means two things. It means to have a daily meditation practice, but it also means to continue to cultivate what we do in meditation for the rest of the day. Because if we simply, and maybe we diligently every morning sit down and do our Shamatha meditation for 30 minutes or even an hour, but then if we jump up and run around as we normally do in our rest of our day, then that 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever of mindfulness will sort of get squashed by our mindless running around for the rest of the day. So we need to make sure that whatever we're meditating on in the morning, we bring that into the day and keep cultivating that the rest of the day. Then we'll notice some progress. So in terms of daily meditation practice, a couple of tips. First, and unfortunately this is very prevalent in our society, is to meditate effectively, we need to have enough sleep. Unfortunately, we're busy, we have no time, so what do we cut? We cut the sleep. And somehow we manage, but I think sleep deprivation is a huge problem in our modern society. If we have this, there's no way we can have an effective meditation practice. In fact, we'll use meditation for more sleep then. So make sure that you get enough sleep. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Then in terms of where to meditate, of course, if you have the luxury where you live to have a separate room, you can dedicate a room for meditation. But many of us probably don't have that luxury. Then at least have a part of the room set aside for meditation and only have meditation there. And make it something comfortable and attractive, something that you want to go there. And clean is important. And then, of course, what is very helpful is to meditate the same time every day. Time as in start time and duration. In terms of start time, if we keep changing when we meditate, we're not developing a habit. And one of the most difficult things is to develop the habit. Whereas if we have the same time every day, then it's much easier to develop a habit, and then it becomes routine. Every day at this time, that's meditation time. Then it becomes easier. And then in terms of length, the key, and I mentioned this already earlier, quality over quantity, particularly with Shamatha practice. Much better to do Shamatha practice in a focused way for 20 minutes rather than sit there for 45 minutes just getting dull and distracted. Because then you're actually increasing the faults, the very faults you're trying to overcome, by allowing yourself to sit there dull and distracted. So, quality over quantity. How long to meditate? As a beginner, that will depend on us as an individual, what our capacities is. As a ballpark, often what we've done in this retreat, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, for many beginners, not a bad time. Enough time to get into it, but not too much time that we're just falling into dullness and distraction. But we have to find out as an individual what works best for us. Maybe for some of us we can meditate longer than that with focus. Maybe some of us that's even a bit too long, maybe 15 minutes, for example. If you want to meditate longer in the morning and you can't sustain it, break the session into 2 or 3 bits with a little break in the middle. So always emphasize quality over quantity. Now, it's also very helpful to set a timer to meditate. So if you want to meditate 20 minutes, have a timer. Use your mobile phone or a clock with an alarm. Because if we don't, one of two things usually happens. One is that on days where things are difficult, maybe you sit down and meditate and things are really difficult, maybe your mind's very negative or all over the place, or very tired, and then after 5 or 10 minutes of trying, we go, oh, it's too difficult, I'll stop. This is not good. Because one of the things we definitely need to develop in the spiritual path is perseverance. If every time when something gets a bit difficult we stop, we're not developing perseverance. We'll need to develop perseverance. If you set a timer, even if things are difficult, we'll persevere. We'll go to the time. So it's going to help with perseverance. Also, the other thing that can happen is if we don't have a timer, we sit down to meditate, and then on a particular day things are going really well. My mind's very calm, clear, focused. Oh, I'm enjoying this. It's good. I'll just keep going. And what do? We keep going till when? Until it starts to go bad. And then we stop. The thing we remember most about meditation is how it ended. So if we're always ending in frustration and distraction and dullness, we're going to start to associate meditation with not so nice experiences. We're not going to want to meditate again. Whereas if we have a timer, we're focused, things are going well, the timer goes, we stop, that's what we remember. And we'll be enthusiastic, we'll want to meditate again the following day. So keep to the time. And then, of course, as we progress in the practice, you'll need to extend the time. If you keep staying with 20 minutes, you're not going to get very far in the Shamatha practice. But over time, as you develop more stability, clarity, you'll need to extend that time. But don't double it in one go. Maybe 5-minute increment. 20, then move to 25 minutes. And once you're comfortable with that, then maybe 30, like that. What object to use for shamatha? We've looked at that a number of times. Again, use the object that works best for you. Use the general recommendation. Don't keep swapping and changing all the time. In the morning practice, of course, I'm not suggesting we just do shamatha practice. That's something we need to see as an individual, what sort of balance of meditation practices. I think for many of us, if we don't have very good attention skills, we're all over the place, dullness, distraction, then probably we'll need to emphasize shamatha in the morning practice, but then we need to bring in some of the other practices, some of the wisdom aspect, some of the compassion aspect, so we can mix that up depending on what's going on in our life, what is important at that time. But we need a balance of those practices, and if we have a qualified teacher, they can help to pick that balance with us. And then, of course, we need to bring whatever we meditate on into the daily life to really move forward. Here, in terms of shamatha practice, that means to cultivate, work on our mindfulness for the rest of the day. Of course, it's good at the start of the day to say, okay, I'm going to be mindful the whole day, but then probably after a few minutes we'll forget that. So therefore, as a beginner, it's good to have what's called triggers, things to remind us to be mindful. And triggers can take a number of forms. One is to pick certain activities that we do regularly each day and make a strong determination always to be mindful, to be present when we're doing that activity. The one classic example is brushing the teeth. You know, we usually do it 2-3 times a day at least. And to really be present when we do that. I mean, now, of course, we're probably running late in the morning. We're quickly brushing the teeth. While we're doing that, we're thinking about all the things we have to do that day. We run out the door and we think, did I brush my teeth? And we can't even remember. So when you're brushing the teeth, brush your teeth. Be aware of that. Don't think of other things. Be aware of the sensations on the gums, the whole action. Just be present with brushing the teeth. And another classic example is eating meals. Again, usually we don't have much time. We're gulping down the food. We're not really enjoying it. Maybe eating too much. Be present. Be present with eating meals, the chewing and so forth. And you'll find that not only is it a mindfulness practice, you're going to start to enjoy your food more than you do now if you have that mindfulness eating food. You're really going to enjoy it much, much more. Actually, I just want to mention something there that might be helpful on that point of mindfulness. And related to this idea, I talked briefly in the worldview, this idea of craving and attachment, always looking for something bigger, better, different. Some years ago, when I did my first long meditation retreat, it was in Spain, on the side of a mountain, beautiful view out, and it was in a retreat centre that provided meals. I don't really like to cook in retreat. And they were very nutritious meals, well prepared, but pretty well the same menu every week. So even if it's something we enjoy, but we eat it week after week after week, then usually after some weeks where you sort of go, oh, not that again. No? But my experience was after about a month, I thought, wow, the cook's really putting a lot more effort into the cooking. It's tasting much better than before. And then a couple more weeks and it's kept getting better. And I'm thinking, no, it's exactly the same as I had 6 weeks ago. What was happening, of course, was due to being in retreat, doing meditation, craving and attachment was slowly settling down. So what was actually happening was the food wasn't getting better, but because my craving and attachment was reducing, I was starting to actually appreciate the food much more. So it seemed to get more tasty, but it wasn't. But I was just really, for the first time, experiencing how tasty it actually was. And together with that, also I was in this nice hut, beautiful view. I was on the side of a mountain, view over the Mediterranean, fantastic view. But then again, if we're in a view like that day in, day out, after some time, we don't even sort of, it's nothing, you know, it doesn't mean anything. Whereas my experience was, everything seemed to be getting more beautiful. Even little things, a little blade of grass, a little flower, wow. Again, nothing was getting more beautiful. What was happening, craving and attachment was going down, and I was appreciating these things much, much more. So this has been my experience, and this is generally often what happens doing these sorts of practices, is that by developing mindfulness, and one side effect of that is craving and attachment reduce. In fact, there's a very classic quote from this great Indian master Shantideva. He said something like, how's it go again? Those with a distracted mind are caught in the jaws of the mental afflictions. Meaning if you have a distracted mind, you're going to have a lot more mental afflictions like craving and jealousy and so forth. So if you can reduce that distracted mind, you can be more calm and clear, a lot of these mental afflictions will subside somewhat. And so if we can really work on the mindfulness, I think what you're going to find is you're going to enjoy the simple pleasures in life much more than we do now. Also, of course, in terms of triggers during the day, we can actually use modern technology to help us rather than as a hindrance. Smartphones, of course, there are many apps, mindfulness apps, which you can program to set an alarm to go off at regular intervals during the day. When you hear that alarm, stop whatever you do and then do a little mindfulness exercise. It may simply be focusing on the breath for 3 breaths. Keep it simple and you'll be surprised how a few of these throughout the day start to get us in the habit of being more present, being more mindful. So use the modern technology to help us. And then what we can do at the end of the day is finish the day on a good note as well. A couple of things we can do there. One, of course, is if we have time and energy, we can do another meditation. Very good. If we don't, maybe we've had a long day, quite tired, at least we can do 2 other things when we go to bed. First is, I think it's very helpful to review our day. How did our day go? And then pick the top 3 negative things we did and the top 3 positive things we did. And with the top 3 negative things, don't get into the whole guilt trip, but rather have regret for having done that thing, reaffirm this, and in Buddhism this is called the 4 opponent powers. I won't go into now, we don't have time, but there are 4 things we can do to help purify our mind of these negative behaviours and negative habits. And that is, the first is to have regret for doing that thing, nothing to do with guilt. Then reaffirm our positive direction that we want to follow in our life. The third thing is think of some sort of remedy opposite to that. Maybe today at work we verbally abuse someone unnecessarily. Remedy could be, okay, tomorrow I'm going to apologise. And then the fourth thing is make a strong resolve, determination not to do it again. If we do those 4 things, with the top maybe 3 things at the end of each day, that's going to start to break our negative habits. Of course, if we go through a list of 10 negative things, it's going to be too extensive and it's too much effort, we're not going to do it. We're not going to be able to sustain it. So maybe just 3 things and do that. But then equally important, maybe even more important, is focus on the positive. Because in our modern society, we're always focusing on the negative. And so we have a completely lopsided view of ourselves and others. So it's very important to also look at the top 3 positive things we did during the day. And with those, 2 things we can do. One is to rejoice, to be happy about doing it. And then to make a strong determination to continue to do that positive thing the following day. In that way, we can strengthen our positive behaviour. So this is something we can do at the end of the day that can help to reduce our negative habits, increase our positive habits. And then the last thing we can do before we go to sleep is lie down in bed in the Shavasana posture, corpse posture. Flat on your back, hands to the side, and then do the first of the Shamatha practices we did. Notice sensations anywhere in the body associated with the breathing, emphasising relaxation. Because often at the end of the day, we have a lot of tension, agitation, mentally, physically from work. So not only is this a Shamatha practice, but it's a way to release any tension, physically and mentally, from the day. So we can do that as long as we can maintain some mindfulness. Once we start to get drowsy, and that may be after a couple of minutes or 5 or 10 minutes, once we start to get drowsy, then just mentally note, okay, my meditation's finished, and then move out of that posture into whatever posture you use for sleep. So this also can be a good transition into sleep because you're releasing a lot of negativity, a lot of tension, and then moving into sleep. So it can really help to move into sleep as well. So that's something I think we can all do at the end of the day. So that's a few tips on how to set up our day. Any last questions before I've got a few final points before I finish? But questions so far about anything I've talked about?
Can you teach children Shamatha? What age is it?
Yeah. And in fact, I think it's best to start young. How young, I don't know. But of course, for young kids, you wouldn't present it in this way. But you can, I think, and they're starting to do that now in certain education systems, to bring in a little bit of mindfulness, particularly for young children, with very, very good results. Even now I saw recently there was one forward-thinking teacher in the US with high school kids, and he was, I don't actually know if it was a woman or man, it doesn't matter. They were in a school that was known for a lot of violence and very bad conditions with the students and stuff. And they've started bringing in mindfulness. This is teenage kids who've not done anything. And they started bringing in a bit of mindfulness into the class each day, and they said it was a dramatic transformation in the children, in the kids, the teenage kids. So, I mean, we can start, but of course it's best to start early. But there are many now organisations who are doing that. And of course, you would need to package it in a way that you can bring to very young children, but that's completely possible.
What exactly Shamatha includes?
Includes?
Yeah.
What do you mean by includes?
Shamatha, is it a kind of meditation, or it includes a few kinds of meditation?
Yeah, so Shamatha, of course, is the practice of just developing a calm, clear, focused mind. And you can use different objects for that practice. But the goal, Shamatha, it's called the practice, but the state of Shamatha is that state of having a very calm, clear, focused mind. So that's stabilizing meditation. And then all the other meditations are grouped in analytical meditation. So Shamatha practice is simply that, developing a calm, clear, and focused mind. That's all. How you do that, you can use different objects, the breath, the mind, awareness, mental image of a Buddha, many different types of objects, but the result is the same. To get to that state of having a very calm, clear and focused mind, the mind of Shamatha.
Using